Alright, what's going on everyone? In this video I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Treasure Hunt Magic Arena starter deck. We'll be upgrading the deck in two stages. First I'll show you how to upgrade the deck with only commons and uncommons so you can build this on a budget, and then I'll show you some of the rares and mythics you can use if you have a few extra wild cards. Although as always I do caution you to spin those wisely as they are difficult to obtain, but hey, maybe you'll have some of the rares and mythics already, so we'll take a look at what we can add to this deck in phase 2. So first off, the Treasure Hunt deck is very straightforward. It wants to create treasure tokens with things like Shambling Ghast, Hoarding Ogre, Gold Span Dragon. Treasure tokens of course are just artifact tokens that can be sacrificed for mana, but this deck likes to find alternate uses for them, such as with Kalane, Skullport, Merchant, and Deadly Dispute. So the first will add +1/+1 counters to creatures when you use treasures to cast them, and that's going to be based on the number of treasures you use. Like if you use 3 treasures, the thing is going to get 3 +1/+1 counters, and then the other 2 could sacrifice treasure tokens to draw cards. So take Deadly Dispute for example. Normally you would expect to have to sacrifice a creature to get 2 cards, but in this case you can sacrifice a treasure, get 2 cards, and then the Deadly Dispute creates another treasure anyway, so you get the treasure right back. So basically it's 2 mana, draw 2 cards, so long as you have a treasure. Now, unlike most of the other starter decks, Treasure Hunt actually isn't watered down with a ton of off-theme cards. That's a big problem with these starter decks, is they have a theme, a strategy, and then like 70% of the cards actually fit that theme. But in this case, everything is on theme. There's just lots of like underpowered cards like Thieves' Tools, Sudden Breakthrough, Jaded Sellsword. These aren't really like constructed playable. They're all pretty mediocre, especially since there are so many powerful options for this archetype. There's a ton of awesome stuff we can add to this deck. It's actually a fairly competitive deck, so let's start replacing these. So first off, we're going to take out an Unwilling Experiment for a 4th Shambling Ghast. Shambling Ghast is one of our best 1-drops for this archetype. Generally, like the ideal scenario is we just trade it with our opponent's 1-drop, like whatever they play on turn 1 or 2. If this can trade with it, fantastic. And we want to create a treasure token. We almost always want to create a treasure token. A lot of people get greedy and they use the -1/-1, but generally the treasure token is more valuable in this deck. Next, I want to take out 2 Sudden Breakthroughs for 2 Deadly Disputes. We described earlier how great this is. Generally, if you have a treasure token, it's 2 mana, draw 2 cards. The Sudden Breakthroughs aren't as reliable. I don't really like them that much. Obviously it's a combat trick, so every once in a while it does a cool thing, but generally Deadly Dispute is just better. Sacrifice your treasure tokens for more cards. Can also sacrifice Shambling Ghasts to get more cards and more treasure. Can also sacrifice anything in response to a removal spell. Your opponent casts a removal spell, in response you just sacrifice it, get a couple cards. So yeah, pretty good. Next I want to take out a Hired Hexblade for a 4th Skullport Merchant. The Hexblade is just a little unreliable, and the Skullport Merchant is fantastic. It's one of our best cards actually. It turns all of our treasures into potential card draw because much like Deadly Dispute, it can sacrifice those tokens for extra cards. The power of this card is its ability to sacrifice treasure tokens for more fuel. And unfortunately, that's it for the budget deck. We couldn't change as much as I want. This deck is amazing when it's fully finished, but there actually isn't a ton of stuff to do at the common and uncommon level. I suppose you can fix the removal. You can probably replace like the magic missiles with black removal, just something more reliable. Although notably, the magic missile can hit players, which is nice, but generally I would say just really good creature removal, probably better, but I don't know, the magic missiles are okay, I guess. I don't know, they're kind of fine. But yeah, this deck is capable of being incredibly powerful when fully upgraded, but there just isn't much we can do here, not yet anyway. But hopefully you already have some of these rares and mythics, because this deck gets really crazy with just a few cards really. First, we're going to take out the Red Dragon for a Gold Span Dragon. Easy change, no big deal here. Gold Span Dragon is insanely powerful. In fact, one of the best cards in Standard. When you think of like the best cards in Standard, you think of the Chariot, You think of Allrun's Epiphany, you think of Goldspan Dragon, like these are the pillars of Standard right now. And not only is it an amazing card, but it's on theme, produces treasures, and also makes those treasures more powerful by allowing them to be sacrificed for 2 mana instead of 1, which is pretty great. We'll also take out 2 Hoarding Ogres for 2 more Goldspan Dragons because, like I said, this is one of the best creatures in Standard, so playing 4 copies in our treasure deck is absolutely reasonable. Definitely want 4 of those, especially when we look at our next upgrade, because we're going to be taking out the 2 remaining Hired Hexblades for 2 Magdas. The Hired Hexblades can be alright every once in a while, like you can sacrifice a token to get an extra card. It's really not that bad. But they can also sometimes just be like a 2 mana 2/2 that do nothing. Magda, on the other hand, not only does she produce treasure tokens, but she also pumps up our Skullport merchants because those are dwarves, so they become 2/4s. But most notably, she can sacrifice 5 treasures to search our library for dragons. And not only do we have a playset of Goldspan Dragons, but there is also the Rakdos Dragon in here as well. So Magda can easily win games. She produces treasures, she pumps some of our other creatures, and then she gives us finishers, which is fantastic. So we also want to take out the Thieves' Tools for a 3rd Magda. The equipment just isn't very good. Like, it produces a treasure token, but other than that, it's pretty weak. So this is pretty easy and obvious. So now that we have Magda, we really want to be able to produce a ton of treasures. We have a very easy way to do that because I want to take out 2 Jaded Sellswords for 2 Zorns. This isn't very popular in treasure decks, but I don't know why. It's insane. Every time you produce a treasure, when you have a Zorn, you get 2 of them. You get an extra one actually, so they stack. If you have 2 Zorns, you're going to get 3. If you have 3 Zorns, you're going to get 4 treasure tokens. So this can lead to just giant, massive piles of treasure, which you can then use to just tutor out a bunch of dragons with Magda. It's pretty crazy. Plus it gives you all these tokens for mana that you can just sacrifice and draw more cards. So Zorn not only lets you get dragons out of your deck with Magda, but also allows Skullport Merchant to just draw like easily like 3 or 4 cards per turn sometimes. So Zorn's crazy, really powerful, underrated, not played in these decks enough, I don't think. But moving on to the mana base, we can take out 4 Sulphurous Mines for 4 Haunted Ridges. The Ridges will occasionally enter tapped, but the Sulphurous Mines always enter tapped, so strictly better. No reason to be playing the Mines when you could be playing the Ridges instead. You can also take out 3 Basics for 3 Pathways, because, well, you know, why draw a mountain or a swamp when you can draw either or, depending on which one you need? Makes sense. It's also probably worth taking out a mountain for a Den of the Bugbear. It can sometimes win games against control decks that have a lot of board sweepers, so a single copy probably doesn't hurt. The same goes for Shatterskull Smashing. I'm not going to officially count this. It's a mythic land, and if you don't already have one, I would say maybe it's not worth it, but it's a land that can be a burn spell. Very powerful, especially with all the treasure tokens we can produce. It can just blow up a couple of creatures, so Shatterskull Smashing actually really good. Replacing a couple mountains with like 1 or 2 of these is probably fine. And that's it, guys. I must say, even though we couldn't do much with this deck on a budget, the non-budget build is so fun to play. I think the finished version of this deck might be my favorite out of all the decks. Like, I think my top 3 decks are Treasure Hunt, the Life Gain deck, Lifeline, and the Avalanche deck. This one's just really cool. It's a little bit janky in that, you know, you kind of sometimes need things to line up well, but it's just so good at drawing cards that it always has gas. It's not like one of those decks where you run out of cards and it's like, well, crap, now I can't do anything. With the Skullport Merchants and Deadly Disputes, you just have so much ability to dig through your deck. Being able to ultimately win with, you know, dragons and stuff is also very cool. So yeah, guys, this deck's pretty cool. I like it a lot. It's definitely better than where we started. And if you agree, be sure to like the video and subscribe, as we are slowly upgrading all these starter decks. We actually only have a few left, in fact, so I have a playlist with all the guides, so there will be a link to that in the description below. There will also be a link on the end screen that you're about to see, so definitely check that out if you're interested in seeing the guides for the other decks. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.